According to an Institute of Policy Studies survey last year, racial and religious relations here in Singapore remain strong, with improved levels of trust compared to 2013. It polled over 4,000 Singapore residents, and nearly 6 in 10 of them felt that racial and religious harmony in Singapore was high or very high. Most were comfortable with those from other races and religions in the neighborhood and at work. Still, this is a slight dip compared to the previous survey, which was seen, for instance, in how they felt among colleagues. And when dealing with public institutions like hospitals and schools, about 9 in 10 felt that they were treated the same way as other races. But the survey also highlighted some areas of concern. One of them being workplace discrimination. It found that Malays and Indians were more likely to feel discriminated, especially when applying for jobs and being considered for promotions. Also, on social and mainstream media, about 1 in 4 respondents were upset by content which insulted their racial or religious customs. Now, for more, we're joined in the studio by Dr. Mathew Mathews. He's Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies.
Yeah, Dr. Mathews, thank you for coming in.
Great to be here.
So talking about today then, there was obviously quite a lot said about how race has been discussed in Singapore. What are your thoughts on what you discovered in your study as well, sort of relating to what we heard from the ministers also talking about how sensitive race still is?
I mean, we definitely have come a long way as a country in terms of racial and religious harmony. We just saw the stats. Most people say, I mean, it is very high, or at least high. But yet at the same time, we always see the fact that racial harmony, religious harmony is a work in progress. There are always things that can upset the balance, make us feel very upset. And I think the rap video here today, and I mean what they were responding to, I mean you can see the kind of forces which make people upset, and sometimes do things which really, I mean, seem to be very, very irrational.
Dr. Mathews, the survey also highlighted some areas of concern as well, one of them being this issue of workplace discrimination, that some among the Malay and Indian community feel that they feel this. The number was higher than 5 years ago. What do you think accounts for that? One,
I guess we must remember that, I mean, the numbers are still, I would say something like about a quarter who feel this very often, but certainly it's a sizable number, especially if you think about it, you feel it sometimes. Quite a bit. A few things that we have to take into consideration. 5 years ago, we put out the statistics there. It's probably among the first few times that people have actually spoken about discrimination at workplace. And since then, I think there's been a number of cases that have come out in the media in terms of people who have gone through discrimination. So I think discrimination is a little bit more salient in people's mind today. So I think more likely, I mean, if you have gone through a difficult patch at work and you think that there might be something which could have been discriminating against you, and it could have been a racial issue, you might be more likely to flag it out today than what it was some time back. Very often there's a perception, and we also have to think about a few things. So one is, this may not be a malicious intent by employers, for instance, to keep out minorities from the workplace. Sometimes it's really about employers who feel that, you know, I know that my workplace cannot accommodate minorities for some reason or other, and I want to save them from a bad experience here. I think more and more, I think we need to, as a society, I think we need to, one, help people to understand that, I mean, work is something that everybody wants to be part of, and minorities too want to get into good jobs and be part of companies, which might be, you know, I mean, people of very, very different racial backgrounds, but they have the, I mean, there would be ways to accommodate and make that happen.
And what else did you find in your research this time around that sort of perhaps changed from previous years?
Well, I mean, there are nice things that we have seen. For instance, when we look at cross-racial friendships, for instance, it's increased, and it's increased across the board. Clearly, for younger people, you definitely see the kind of, I mean, younger people have definitely embraced a lot more friendships which are cross-cultural. I think this is very important because I think it sets the precedent for being able to deal with all the different kinds of potential tension. Then we've also seen that trust levels have gone up. In general, I mean, even minorities strongly trust the majority race, which I think is very, very commendable. It's not found in many, many societies. In many societies, the idea is that, I mean, if you're the minority, you always think about the majority as oppressive or as trying to marginalize you. In Singapore, the fact that you don't see that, I mean, shows something about...
What was the context for that, for that question?
We asked about national crisis. I mean, what proportion of people of this particular race would you trust to help you in a national crisis like SARS, for instance. So, I mean, at least people have that sense. I mean, even minorities here have a strong sense that the majority can be trusted. So I think that's an important,
especially when things go wrong.
Yes, it is. It is.
The study also pointed areas for improvement, though. What were those?
Well, I think you look at across the board. You look at, for instance, potential things that can be tense in our environment. We think about our estates and housing estates and all that. They're great places, but they're things that people get irritated about. And some of these things are things that pertain to racial, religious customs and practices. And the numbers are not very, very high, but certainly significant. And if people don't know how to respond to some of the irritation, they make a big rant on social media, and people do get insulted by social media and what gets put up there. That can have consequences. It can, deepen rifts between communities. I think we have to keep being careful about that and mindful about that.
Dr. Mathews, thank you for coming in to talk to us about the survey results from the IPS. We've been speaking there to Dr. Mathew Mathews, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies.